guys, it's been a long time, about a year actually. It feels really weird to be standing in front of my phone and pretending that it's a person who I can talk to. In case anyone's wondering where I've been the last year, I went through my first year of university, so I'm now studying a combination of the wildly hireable English history and religion. I ended up taking a break because this is taking up too much time and a lot of other things going on, but you know, a year later, I'm like, hey, I still have no one to talk to about books besides the internet, so I might as well attempt to make a bunch of videos where I talk about them again and see if anyone cares enough to listen again. I really missed talking to a lot of people, so it's been really nice to get back in touch with some of the people who used to comment on my videos and who I used to talk to. It kind of helped me remember, this is a really cool place in the sense that most people don't care about the books you read on a daily basis, but here you can put up your phone, you can start talking about it, and someone out there is like, hey, I care that you read this one book 3 weeks ago, what'd you think of it? And that's shockingly not that normal. So I can't really make any promises about how much content I'm going to be making or when or about what, but I do know that over the last year I've kind of become a very different reader, I guess, because I've spent a lot of time at university reading articles and really dense, boring things, and that's kind of increased my tolerance for boring, dry literature, I suppose. And also I kind of want to incorporate a lot of the things I've learned at university. So I've studied some things, let's say I took a course on Russian modernism, so I think it'd be kind of fun to sort of make videos where I talk about some of the things I've learned and incorporate that with my own thoughts on the books that I read in relation to that. So there might be some content like that. I've been writing again lately, so I kind of want to incorporate that as well. But again, I haven't done this in a year. I can't make any promises. But yeah, that's that. I'm back for now. Very excited to be here. If you used to comment on my videos, you remember us talking, please get back in touch. I really did have missed talking to everyone here and sort of being a part of this community. It's something that the lack of I've noticed in my life, where I used to be able to talk about books all the time with different kinds of people, and then not having that does kind of suck. I thought I'd get back into the swing of things by reviewing 2 nonfiction books that I read this year. Those are The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion and A Short History of Religion by Richard Holloway. So the first, The Year of Magical Thinking, I honestly had probably not the best reading experience, worst of which just in terms of how I was physically reading it. Because I was reading it very, very slowly over several weeks because I was in school and I didn't tend to read that much while I was in school. And that contributed to a general detached feeling I had when reading the book. And so I think that at least half of that feeling, or a good portion of it, was that kind of spread out reading and me not really being able to focus on it for a long period of time. But I also think some of that is just the tone of Joan Didion, and I have noticed that in other reviews as well. So I think it isn't just me, I don't think. She has a very crisp, detached and poised writing style, which is very good for journalism and not necessarily even bad for this book, but it does often keep you at arm's length. So what I mean by that is that this is a grief memoir. It's about after her daughter was hospitalized, her husband suddenly dies, and it's about Joan Didion essentially reeling from that shock and writing about how she dealt with it, how she thought about it, what grief is like, her memories with her husband. It's in that detached tone, partially because I think that's just how she processes things, and she's writing about this several years later. And so it's looking back on her grief and just trying to analyze it and trying to convey it in a way that's somehow literally coherent and giving you some kind of point. While this detached feeling I do think is something that most readers will feel, I also think that it's partially almost a positive attribute of the book in the sense that it's not a melodramatic tale of a woman crying every day because her husband died. It's also just a genuine reflection on grief, and so I do think she kind of toes that line pretty well. One quote I think essentially summarizes the book, and that is when talking about the death of her husband, she says, "A single person is missing for you, and the whole world is empty." And essentially, she loses her husband, her whole world is empty, and she reels from that shock, and she tries to process it in some way. So sometimes her grief takes on these odd forms. At one point, she talks about how when she was purging her husband's things and getting rid of all his clothes and various things he didn't need, she kept a pair of his shoes because she couldn't let go of the fact that he might return and he might want to wear a shoe. And that's an example of that kind of magical thinking that's reflected in the title. Grief is not a linear process, and it's this weird process that she tries to untangle for you, and she tries to make it as processable and literary as possible, but at times it's just odd. Overall, I don't think I particularly enjoyed reading this book, or I don't think I particularly even liked this book, but some of that might also just be the fact that I can't really relate to death. I've never had anyone who's very close to die, and also as someone who is in my late teens in university and is still very, very young, to understand the depth of feeling that comes with losing a husband who you've known for that long. I didn't really enjoy reading it, but I respect it. And I think that it's something that if and when I end up dealing with similar kinds of feelings, it is something I think I'll return to. I think it's valuable to read as someone who hasn't experienced grief just to understand it, but I think there's an extra layer of like of hearing and seeing your experiences reflected in the book that would make it much more special, much more appealing for a lot of people. The second nonfiction book was A Little History of Religion by Richard Holloway. I read this because, as I said, I'm studying religion at university, and in first year I took a course which is like a survey world religions course, and I kind of just wanted to get a refresher and sort of just like level out my learning and sort of, you know, fill in any gaps I didn't learn at school. One thing I like was how the author handled the religion. So he himself was the former Bishop of Edinburgh, but he resigned in 2000 and he ended up leaving the church. So he clearly has his problems with organized religion, but he's very fair in how he assesses things. Sometimes he brings up questions about religion, such as, is religion intrinsically tied to violence? Is organized religion bad? Like, he brings up these questions when they're relevant, and he answers them, or he doesn't really answer them, but he kind of, you know, presents all the facts, and he lets you make your own conclusions. And so I never felt like he had an agenda at any point in the book. I felt like he was just sort of presenting the information in a way that was very, very simple and accessible, and quite fair. Like, I think he did go into this with the intent of being as fair as possible. My one issue is that often it felt too simplified. So for instance, in the first chapter, he defines what a symbol is, and along with a variety of other terms that I felt kind of demeaned when reading, but I think some of that might have just been pride, because to be fair, he was just sort of defining some of the major terms he would work with throughout the book. It's very, very simple, and it is very easy to understand, and in some ways it is probably a very positive attribute of the book. Like, you don't need to know anything about religion to read the book. It is designed for those who know absolutely nothing. You can go into it and get like a nice survey. At times though, I did feel like it was too simple to the point of sometimes being inaccurate, and I don't know if some of that is just me having studied some of these things in school and therefore being a little more picky about it. At one point he brings up the fact that Jainism is divided into two major sects, which is the Svetambara and the Digambara, and he says that, you know, there's no difference between them other than that one wears clothes and one doesn't. And that's just not true. Like, I know for a fact that that's not true, and there are relatively major, like, theological differences when it comes to these two sects. And so, on one hand, it's not his responsibility to give you every detail about everything in religion. That's just not the point of the book. On the other, I do feel like sometimes there are points in the book where he was simplifying to the point where I was like, that's just not true. I don't know, that might be an issue for you, it might not be. The other thing I didn't really like is that I think at times he focuses too much on the Abrahamic faiths and then more specifically on Christianity. So he spends a good amount of time discussing different denominations of Christianity, but he spends less time talking about Buddhism, for instance, or Hinduism. I don't think it was a huge issue. It was more near the end of the book that he kind of focused on it for a little while. My overall impression of the book is it is very simple. It's very good for people who either know nothing about religion and just want to get a nice like starter pack to then like go off and learn more, or it might be good for people who, like me, who just like completed a course, for instance, just want a refresher and everything. Like, I just want to kind of level out my knowledge about world religion so I can then continue to, you know, delve deeper into the things that I'm interested in. But yeah, I feel like I've been talking for way too long. Those are my 2 reviews of the books. It's good to be back. Please, you know, comment if you've read these books, comment if you're interested. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.